Good morning, everybody. So I want to thank you for coming today, those of you who are in person. I want to thank those of you who are on Facebook Live or on YouTube Live as well. So we've given people a lot of different options for how to do this today. I also want to thank two of our trustees are here in person, so Trustee Katsinas and Trustee Milani are here as well. So I want to thank them for coming as well. So I appreciate everyone being here for our State of the Village, which was supposed to be back in May. That's the typical time that we do it. Obviously, with COVID, we had some changes to that, and so we've decided to move back and now have it in October. Go ahead to the next slide. So, speaking of COVID, one of the first thing that we'll talk about today is we'll talk about public health. We're going to talk about these other issues today too. We'll talk about public safety. We'll talk about fiscal issues. We'll talk about infrastructure investment, economic development as well. So. And then we'll open it up for questions. So, obviously the topic of the day for everybody has been since, about March, I guess, is COVID. So, this is the timeline since the beginning of April from the Illinois Department of Public Health. You can see what's happened with cases over time. Went up, back down, and then back up again. And you can kind of see some of the markers of what happened during those times. So flip to the next slide. Testing's also increased. So when you look at cases, when they were really peaked, it was kind of up in here when there was almost no testing. Now our testing is way up here. So you have to factor that in when you're thinking about cases and testing, and that's why one of the reasons that cases are not your best indicator in the world. In fact, it's probably one of the worst indicators, is because it's all dependent on testing, and it's dependent on who you test, depends on when you test. Many people get tested multiple times. Every test gets reported. So all of that kind of, can give you incomplete information. Certainly it's trending upward. Sounds like the mic's working better. Certainly it's trending upward, but you have to keep that in mind. So then you look at test positivity, which will give you a little bit of information on how that's working. So that's the next slide. You can see where test positivity was way back here when we were doing very little testing, because we were only testing people that were sick. You probably all maybe know somebody who was sick during that time, that they were said, if you're not that sick, just stay home. You probably have it, don't even get tested, right? So there were a lot more cases out there. A lot of studies done in April and May across the country saying 20 to 30 times as many people had it as what was really being reported at the time. So if you look at now, so testing has stayed relatively flat, underneath 5%. It's gone a little bit above that statewide recently, as we've heard about. Not necessarily completely unexpected, because again, it's the fall. And so we've seen this with flu, we've seen this with pneumonia, we see this with rhinovirus, we see this with all kinds of respiratory viruses. This is what happens. So flip to the next. So Orland Park. You see, we've been flat through all of this. Testing has continued to ramp up. Now you see that we are increasing, and you're going to see more on another slide exactly what that indicates. We've been increasing here in October, but you have to remember, we fully opened here. We started doing events here. We did events all the way through here. So we really have shown we've been able to do, there are ways to do this and do it safely. So flip on to the next slide. But you've seen it in the news, cases are going up. It's getting colder, people are inside. So all of that's happening for sure. So you can see in August, we were at 9.5, September we were at 8.6. That's when we were doing all of our events. That's per day, new cases per day. Cases have also testing's gone up, so that's driving some of this, but you can see we've over doubled so far in October. So something to pay attention to. But again, cases aren't your best indicator. That's hospitalizations, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So, stay back. So, again, not a complete surprise, not a reason to panic, just something that we have to continue to keep an eye on and understand. You know, we saw some things out there saying that we had the highest caseload ever in September. Well, that actually wasn't true. We didn't. Okay, we actually were down in September, and that's, you think about it during the summer, that's when we had all of our events. So, so this, the question becomes, why is this happening? So it makes you ask the question, for what reason is this happening? So go on to the next one. Before we go into that, look at Orland Park. Relative to the rest of the state, including all the rural areas, Orland Park's just slightly higher than the rest of the state, much lower than suburban Cook County, lower than Chicago case rate. So flip to the next slide. Now, so back to the whys. Why is this happening? So we just talked about the fact, so you'll hear it's happening because we had events. Well, a lot of places didn't have events, they're going up too. We had events, and as you saw from the slides, we stayed flat through September, and our last major event was September 12th. And we had events in August, we had events in July. So it's not the events that are causing it. People say, well, schools. The schools that are opened in August. Schools that are going to open are opening in November. So it's not schools that are causing an October spike because they didn't go up in August, they didn't go up in September. So again, you know, what's causing it? Well, we're more open. Well, no, we're not. We're at the same open level from a statewide perspective. We're at the same open level from a village perspective as we've been since July 20th. So that's not causing it. So I'm sure we've all heard, well, it's people aren't wearing masks. Now, this is anecdotal, but I go around, like in an event like this, I see a lot more people wearing masks in and out. I wear masks more. I think everyone's wearing masks more than I did in May, that's for sure. In middle of May when we were spiking and then decreasing. In fact, a lot of us, the masks weren't available. That's when they first started making the cloth masks. So, and certainly surgical masks weren't available. We were having a tough time getting all that, so that was back in May. So this shows you mask usage. So this is actually tracked by the University of Washington. They do this, so this is actually observed data on how people are wearing masks. This is in the state of Illinois. So you notice in May, when we had this big drop off, we were just starting to ramp up in our mask usage, and then it stayed pretty flat between 65 to 70% of the people wearing masks, at least observed as wearing masks regularly, okay? So when you hear that people point the finger and say it's people not wearing masks that are causing it, that's not the issue. The data is pretty clear, that's not the issue either. So it's not events, it's not schools, it's not being open, it's not masks. So flip to the next slide. Social mobility. So it's hard to project, it's hard to track social distancing. It's like right now, you know, obviously I'm socially distant from everyone, which is probably the most important thing you can do outside of washing your hands and staying home when you're sick. So social mobility, they track that via cell phones. And again, this is data that have actually tracked over time. And you can see back in April, the state of Illinois, we were pretty locked down. We were about more than 50% less mobile than normal. So that's where it bottomed out, and then it's gradually increased. Now more recently it's increased a little bit, but not a whole heck of a lot. You know, so I guess where I'm getting at with this is there's a lot of finger pointing that I've seen, we've all seen it publicly, about cases going up. This was expected. There's nobody to blame for this. It's not college kids. It's not people going to restaurants. It's not restaurant owners. In fact, there's no data that I know that's been shared that says it has anything to do with restaurants. So I haven't seen any of that. So I guess my point to everyone is this is real. It's a serious virus. It's not our first serious virus. We deal with the flu every year. So take common sense precautions. But pointing fingers at everyone is not at all helpful. And that's what we're seeing a lot of. We're saying, you know, this person, we always look for someone to blame. There's no one to blame. It's a virus. No one in the state of Illinois, no one in the United States of America is to blame for this thing. It's a virus. So let's use common sense. Here's the good news. So we'll go back to daily cases again. Go ahead. Back to daily cases. So again, we talked about, you know, all of the, what are the causes? Well, keep in mind, mask usage really started going up in this area. Mask usage hasn't changed, yet cases are going up, right? So we had events, cases statewide were going up, ours were staying pretty flat. So schools opened up in this area, cases were flat, and they really didn't start increasing again until out here in October. So again, we have to factor all these factors in, testing, all of this that's going on. Go ahead, flip to the next slide. But here's the good news. The real indicator that really tells us what's happening. And remember, all of these lockdowns, what were anybody remember why we had these lockdowns to begin with? Anybody? Flatten the curve, not overwhelm the hospitals, right? That was the goal. somewhere we've forgotten where that goal is and what that goal was. So this was hospitalizations per day. That black line is an average over 14 days of hospitalizations per day in suburban Cook County that are COVID, not COVID-like illnesses, actually tested positive for COVID. So they do go back, which is why you see this little trail here, because they don't have the data yet for that, for those last few days, okay? This is as of yesterday. So you'll see, just like what we knew, it peaked around the beginning of May. We were at almost 125, 130 hospitalizations, new hospitalizations in suburban Cook County every single day. We still didn't, our hospital system still did not get overrun, but we're getting close. We're getting worried, okay? Well, you can see that dropped off significantly. And by the beginning of June, around June 12th or 13th, we were pretty much between 10 and 15 cases per day on average, new throughout the entire, so 1/10 of what it was at the peak. And that's through the entire suburban Cook County, not the city, but the rest of suburban Cook County. That number has stayed flat and still is flat. So even though we're seeing cases spike through the roof, October, we're still seeing the same number of hospitalizations going into the hospitals. So that's the key indicator, because if we have 100,000 cases and they're all mild and they don't go to the hospitals, then it's not a huge issue. What's a huge issue is if people are really sick from this and need to go to the hospitals. So the really good news is, through treatment protocols, through education, through probably mutations, and also the fact that generally a virus will hit the most susceptible first to a disease like this, that we're not seeing the same level of scariness that we saw way back here. Now, if this starts to spike up, now we have a different discussion to have. But at the current time, the hospitals are in great shape. So back to my point, yes, cases are going up, but don't panic, don't point fingers. It's a virus, and the virus is going to spread. Cases aren't going to stop. And a vaccine is probably over a year away. So this is likely, when I talk to the experts, likely going to run its course before a vaccine is widely available. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try to get a vaccine, but the reality is, the way viruses work, if you look at flu pandemics and other things we've had, after 18 months, that cycle is fairly mature and pretty well through. So, flip to the next slide. So, if you question the hospitals, again, that was suburban Cook County. This is statewide, so you can see hospital beds, and you can go right on the IDPH website and see this. This is the hospital beds. What you see in orange are the number of open beds in orange. ICU beds, the number of open beds. You can see around May, ICU beds, you know, we had to create some more beds to be available, and we didn't have the availability that we have now. Now we have a lot of availability. It hasn't really changed much. This is for COVID patients. The blue at the bottom, you can say that stayed relatively flat. Yeah, it's trickled up just a tick, but not a lot. It's nowhere near where it was. I would show you the ventilator page, but there's almost nothing on that anymore because it's very rarely a treatment anymore. So again, and the reason I show this is because I don't want to see people panicking out there, and I really don't like to see the finger pointing, because it's a virus. No one's to blame for this. So let's just use common sense. Continue to use common sense, and it's the washing your hands and staying home when you're sick are really, really, really critical. And then after that, social distancing, and then all the retail stores are asking for masks. I see people wearing masks there all the time. I see people here wearing masks today, right? And myself, I'm staying away from people because I'm not currently wearing a mask because I'm speaking. So this is obviously the issue of the day for all of us, so I felt it was really important to bring this up in the State of the Village. So now we'll talk about public safety. Another thing that popped up with the looting and riots we saw in many cities throughout the country, and it creeped out into the suburbs, and we did a great job, and thanks to Chief Mitchell and our entire police department, and Chief McCarthy at that time, for all of their hard work to keeping us all safe. But I want to bring Chief Mitchell up now and introduce Chief Mitchell, who is our new police chief, so we'll give him a round of applause. He's been with the department for 26 years? He's been with the department for 26 years, working all the way through. Deputy chief was for what, 7, 8, 9?
5 years.
5 years? Okay. It felt like 7.
It felt longer than 7 at times.
So I'm going to turn this over to him to walk you through some of the crime statistics, and then I'm going to take it back from him.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Great. So what we're going to look at is a comparison of index crimes from 2019 versus 2020. That's where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. So what are index crimes? Index crimes are the homicides, they're the robberies, the rapes, the aggravated assault and batteries for the violent crimes. And the property side is the burglaries, the thefts, the stolen motor vehicles, and the arsons. That's what we report to the state of Illinois, and it heads over to the federal government from there to determine, what our stats are. So go ahead and hit the next one. So 2019 versus 2020, we're seeing a negative 31.54% down. That's tremendous. And why is that? We'll drill down in that shortly. But in 2019, reported 723 index crimes during that time period, and 495 this year. Go ahead. In 2019, that was the lowest index crimes in 25 years. 25 years of gathering data. 2019 was our year of the least amount of crime reported in Orland Park. We're hoping to beat that this year. Go ahead. So here's our violent crimes. 1 criminal homicide in 2019, the Orland Square Mall. None this year, with the exception we had a reckless homicide, which does not count for a homicide under the stats because of the criminal intent. So it was recklessness. And that occurred back in January. We had a 7-year-old child that was unfortunately deceased during a traffic accident. 2 rapes in 2019, 0 this year. Our robberies up to 6 this year, 7 last year. Our aggravated assault and batteries are the highest at 10. Go ahead. So in 2020, what is the most predominant victim of our aggravated assault and batteries? Anybody want to gander a guess at that? What is that? Anybody?
Police officers.
Police officers. Law enforcement officers have been attacked more this year than any other year. 26% higher this year than 2019. The second most are family members. This quarantine is causing a lot of people to be frustrated at home with their wives or husbands or next of kin, their siblings, and that's what's resulting in the second highest. Next, please. So here's our burglaries. In 2019, we're at 26, we're at 10 this year. That is an incredible decrease, number of burglaries that are occurring in Orland Park. Substantial decrease. Hats off to the men and women of the police department out there working each and every day. Our thefts are down, obviously, because at one point, COVID had caused them all to shut down, as well as other retail establishments, and that's to be expected. Our motor vehicle thefts are climbing up, and I'll tell you why, ladies and gentlemen. People continue to leave their car unlocked with the key fob or the keys inside the vehicle. These are crimes of opportunity that frustrate us as an organization. We have a 9 p.m. routine that we put out on social media. We did different things, actually put stickers on people's cars to remind them to please lock their car doors and put their key in their pocket. And our arsons are at 0. Go ahead. So this is what we're looking at right now. Our homicide, robbery, and aggravated assaults. Our homicide being that reckless homicide in January we saw. Our robbery's at 75%. We're currently looking at one now. We believe we're going to have it cleared in the next couple weeks. We're at Norm Cleaners. And then our aggravated assault and batteries at our 100% clearance rate. As you can tell, that is substantially higher than the national average, which is in the kind of the light green color, and much, much higher than the Midwest average of clearances for cases. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So this is our calls for service. What do you think, what type of call is driving the increase for the number of calls for service for us coming this year so far? Substantially higher. Anybody have any idea? Business or property checks. Because of the looting and the unrest, we are completely on top of this thing. We're checking every single business every night and every day. So that's what's driving the increase. Can you next slide, please? So calls for service in 2019, which one do you think was the total number of calls for service we responded to in 2019? Anybody have any guess? It's going to be C, 209,066 calls for service we went to in 2019. Can you hit the next slide? This is what we're currently at right now, 213,180. We expect to eclipse 300,000 calls for service in 2020. That is the highest we've ever had in the history of the Orland Park Police Department. Equates to about a call every 1 minute and 45 seconds. We're responding to a call or doing officer-initiated activity. So we are quite busy out there. So that's why you see a lot of officers around in these business complexes, at the mall, because we're making sure things are safe. Okay. And as you can see here, this is the lowest amount of crimes, 974 in 2019. We're hoping to be even lower than that in 2020. Any questions?
So I have a question for you.
Sure.
So obviously we're under a lot of pressure from crime, more than we have been for a very, very long time. The question for you is, what's one of the biggest things that's causing us to have to deal with criminals over and over and over again?
Wow, it's a pretty loaded question there, Mayor, but it's an extremely loaded question. But it's called Kim Fox, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. I've been doing this job for 26 years. Never in the history of my career we've ever had a vote of no confidence for a state's attorney until now. Every Cook County Suburban Chiefs Association has a vote of no confidence for her. You have to ask yourself, why is that? Why would people vote a no confidence for your Cook County State's Attorney? Well, in 2020, in August, Chicago Tribune published an article that's very important for people to know about. And that article looked at her stats. She dropped over 29.9% of all felony charges in Cook County. 29.9% of all felony charges were dismissed by her office. That's over 25,000 felony charges, ladies and gentlemen, that were not charged. People were not held accountable for their actions. 8% of those were homicides. 9.5% of those were sex-related crimes. Sex-related crimes. And 8%, nearly double Anita Alvarez, was aggravated battery against law enforcement. I understand we need criminal justice reform, but it should not be at the threat of public safety. And quite frankly, her policies, in fact, threaten public safety. Any other questions?
And we'll open up the questions at the end as well, and Chief Mitchell will be here to answer those questions. Thank you, Chief. And I really want to thank the Chief and the Police Department for all the good work they do. I know, because I see this stuff on social media. There's stuff on social media, crime here, crime here. As the Chief just pointed out, 213,000 calls for service. Well, those calls for service go out over the scanner. People listen to the scanner and they assume that there's something going on. We're just responding to a 911 call. But the facts are, crime is way down. If you look at index crimes, 2016, it was 1,360. We're down to 974. It's decreased every year since that time. That's because our officers do an amazing job. They're proactive. And if you go back, we're not going to go back to that slide, but if you remember the slide where they showed the clearance rates being so high, that's why. Because criminals know if they come here, they're going to get caught. They're going to get caught, and we're going to put a case together that gets them charged. So they'd rather go somewhere else where that's not going to happen. So if you look at Orland Square, crime is down 35% from 2016 to 2019. It's down more this year. The lowest number of crimes against person in 2018, we were number 1. In 2017, we were number 2. I'm going to show you a slide on that later. So that's violent crimes. Again, our arrest rates are great. Our property crimes have dropped from 1,335 down to 948 in 2019. So again, our police department's doing an amazing job. They're supported by the board, and they do a great job of protecting us. Flip to the next slide. So the violent crime that we were talking about, this shows in 2018, based on FBI crime statistics, what our violent crime rate was in the state of Illinois for towns bigger than 50,000. We are the lowest. And you look at Arlington Heights is next, Tinley Park, Palatine, Mokina. Here's the good news, Tinley Park, Mokina, they're there too, right? And I threw Mokina up there, they're not over 50,000, but I threw them in there so you could see where they're at from a violent crime rate. This region is safe. They do a great job, and our neighboring police departments do a great job of coordinating with us to make sure that you're kept safe. Flip to the next slide. So we hear about the mall all the time. Now we've shown you the statistics for the village. There's no question that our busiest area is the mall because it's got all of our retail, and the predominant issue that we have is retail theft. So that's not a shock. But if you look, you hear this all the time, it drives me crazy when I hear this. Oh, it's not safe, I'm gonna go to Oak Brook. Well, we have a group that looks at all the malls throughout the country. We're actually safer than Oak Brook, if you look at the statistics. Safer than Woodfield. I agree, Oak Brook and Woodfield are both safe malls, but so is Orland Square. That's reality, those are the facts. I always hear, well, this is how I feel. I can't really change how people feel. I can't change the emotion they bring to the table. All I can do is give you the facts, and these are the facts. Flip the next slide. So if you look from out 6 miles, and again, that line there you see is the national average. So 100 is the national average. Anything below that is better than the national average. You can see out of all those malls in the region, we're the only one that's actually below the national average as far as crime. So there's a lot of reasons. You know, we're not right on a major highway, that helps. But the biggest reason is because we have a great police department. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of this, and we have a great relationship with the mall. They recognize the importance of keeping their mall safe. They recognize the importance of working with us. We obviously recognize the importance of keeping the mall safe. So we work very closely with the mall. The mall has upgraded all their lighting and their camera systems since I've been in office. We have access to that 24/7 if we need it. It has actually helped us to catch criminals that have committed a crime off of the mall property. So things that have happened outside of the mall property, the cameras are good enough that they pick some of that up. So that's helped us. We have intergovernmental agreements with Oak Forest, Tinley Park, Orland Hills, and Midlothian to work regionally on the car break-ins. Haven't we added a couple to that?
We have the Heights, Midlothian, we've got Matson, we've got Palos Park, Tinley Park.
So Palos Park, Matson, Palos Heights, I've also joined that as well. So as you see, Palos Park and Palos Heights, and Madison is also all to work on that car break-in. But again, as the chief said, lock your car, keep your key fob with you. That's going to solve the problem. We continue to work on our strategies. We don't talk about the strategies because obviously we don't want to let the criminals know, but we are continually updating those. That's why you see such great results. We proactively reach out to residents via code red calls, via social media. We put stickers on your cars. We do all of that. Also, there are times where we see things that, you know, when we have beat officers that are driving around a beat, and they see something different in someone's house, and they just stop and do a house check. How many of you in here have maybe left your garage door open, and an officer's knocked on the door at 1 o'clock in the morning to let you know? How many of you has that happened to? Yeah, there's a few of us that are willing to raise our hands. It's happened to me once or twice. So they do that. So that's our officers being proactive. So now, something that's near and dear to all of us is the fiscal issues. And we know we face fiscal issues because of COVID. There's no doubt about that. But we're going to talk about some of those. So first, I'll just talk briefly about your property tax bill. So your property tax bill, it's really important that you understand that these assessments, when you get an assessed value, what they do is they assess industrial and commercial at 25% of the value here in Cook County versus 10% for residential. So additionally, there's exemptions for homeowners, senior citizens, and the senior assessment freeze. And the reason why I'm showing this slide is so people understand that a $300,000 property value does not necessarily have the same tax bill. If you're a commercial property, you're paying $7,500 on that. A homeowner, $2,300. A senior homeowner, $1,800. So it's important that you understand that, that our businesses do carry a big burden on the property taxes here in Cook County. In other counties, that assessment's equal, so that the values would be the same other than the senior exemption. So that's important to note. So businesses are struggling from COVID, plus they have this. It does make it very challenging for them. So Orland Park was 6.47% of your total tax bill in 2019, and you can see a comparison of 2019 and 2018, what happened with your tax rates, and about 2/3 of your property tax increase in 2019 was District 135, so it's the schools that are driving a large part of your property tax. About 79% of your tax bill are the schools and the fire protection district. We have great schools. We have a great fire protection district. Those are important. But to let you know where you're spending your money, the village actually is very low, relatively speaking. We're fourth in here. And so there are property taxes there. We've kept our levy flat for a long time. We've given a directive to staff to actually lower it next year due to COVID to provide some relief. So, but that's what's happening with your tax bill. So I get questions all the time. Where did our rebate go? Where did our rebate go? Well, when I arrived here in 2017, what I learned was, I look back, and all these red lines you see are debt. That's the debt we took out those years. All the blue lines, those are rebates. So we were borrowing more money than we were giving you back in rebates every year. To me, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I borrow money that you have to pay back to give you money now? So we stopped doing that, because that just doesn't make fiscal sense. It does not make sense to borrow money to give you money back via your property tax bill. It would make more sense to just not tax you in the first place. So that's why we stopped doing that. And then additionally, a lot of capital projects, as you're going to see later, were deferred. We have to invest in our roads and in our parks. Flip to the next slide. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I didn't see her earlier. Trustee Fenton is here. I had told you Trustee Milani and Trustee Katsinas were here, but Trustee Fenton is also here. I didn't see her earlier when at the introduction. So one of the big issues we face, we all know, pensions. Okay? So if you look at this slide, what this shows you is our police pension and the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. Those are our two big pension funds. Okay? You can see the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund is funded at about 94%. Police, not as high, 67%. But those numbers that you see, over a 10-year period, our payroll increased a little over 2.5% with police, a little less than 2.5% with our other employees. But our pension liabilities went up 8% a year, and roughly, a little over, a little less for the two. And the annual contribution to the police fund went up 9% a year, yet we're still only funded at 67%, and the contribution went up 4.5% a year for IMRF. Obviously, that's not sustainable. It's not salaries that are causing these issues. You have a 9% growth year after year. I mean, 8 years, that's doubled as far as how big the pension fund is, so, or what we're contributing. So that's unsustainable. It's something that needs to be fixed at the state level. We've all heard it for a long time. That's the biggest pressure we have on our budget. One of the biggest things that makes it difficult for municipalities is pensions. Orland Park's very fortunate. We have so much commercial, so much economic growth, so much vitality that we can absorb this for a period of time, but we will not be able to absorb it forever. A lot of other towns have already been crushed by it. We're not there yet, but this is something we have to fix. And unfortunately, that has to be fixed at the state level. It's not something that the village can do anything about. So since the end of 2016, so we've looked at what can we do to put ourselves in a better position going forward. So back in 2016, we had $119 million of long-term debt. We've dropped that in 2019 to $67 million. So we took $44 million of our long-term debt off the books. And you're going to see why that's important here very shortly. Flip to the next slide. So our operating expenditures. So then you have two things. You have operating expenditures and capital. Capital are your roads, your parks, all those investments you need to keep your buildings up. Operating expenditures are your day-to-day, our park staff, our police. That's our day-to-day expenditures. So in 2017, our operating expenditures were $66 million. Over the next 2 years, we worked to cut about 13% out of that budget. So we went to $57.5 million. So we tried to be as fiscally responsible as possible and save some of that money that we were spending and get some of that debt off of our books. Flip to the next slide. Part of that was we had an early retirement. So rather than just fire people, we had an early retirement allowing people to exit, and what that did was allow us to eliminate some positions. So as you can see, we had 276 in 2017. We didn't have all the positions filled that were allotted. In 2018, we were pretty full, and then gradually with the early retirement, we've seen that number go down. The reason it's gone down as much this year is because most of the early retirements actually happened this June. So that's when we saw the full-time employees, and we haven't filled those positions. So originally we were going to backfill to about 270 and eliminate about 15 positions. Now we're at 259 because we've decided that there's some other positions we can do without, and we're finding ways to become a leaner operation, still offer services and do a good job providing services, but without as many full-time employees. You can see also our part-time employees are down. They are down. They're probably not quite down that much. That's probably a little bit indicative of the fact that all of our stuff was not open in July when those numbers were taken, so we'd be a little bit higher than that. Flip to the next slide. This is the really, really important slide. So this was first shown to me in 2017 when we were going through the budget. So this over here to the left is our desired reserve level. So our desired reserve level is 20% in case there's an emergency, like COVID. It's a good example. Okay. Apparently this had been known since like 2012, but we hadn't done anything to address it. So one of the first things I said is that I told the board then was we need to address this. The board agreed, and that's when we started making the decisions on the early retirement and reducing the operating expenses that you saw previously, and paying down the debt. Okay? Because here's where we were projected to be in 2020. We have a desired reserve level of 20%. We were projected to be at 6.7. Okay? Which would have been what, $3-4 million? And then COVID would have hit. We would have been, where a lot of other towns are cutting everything and stopping all services, that's where we would have been had we not taken action. Because we took action, this year's budget, the projected reserve was 31%, 10% over, and as you can see, we basically fixed out to 2023. And we would continually do that each year, continue to make improvements so that improves. Now, I can promise you that reserve level has dipped down below it because reserves are there for emergencies like this. Had we not taken the debt off the books that we did, 44 million, had we not cut the operating expenses in advance, being fiscally responsible, we would have been in a horrible position to handle COVID. Because of those actions, because we were proactive, we were able to put ourselves in a position where with COVID, we haven't had to make drastic cuts. Yeah, there's a few extra positions we didn't fill, but we haven't had to make massive cuts. We've been able to continue to operate. If you think about, what happens in a crisis like this on a personal level, people who have a lot of cash, they go buy land cheap because they have a lot of cash. And the people who are in financial trouble get in worse trouble. That's exactly what's happening here. And so as a village, because we're in this position, we didn't have to take drastic steps. We could do things to help businesses. We could look for opportunities to still grow the village. We didn't have to panic. Now, this number, I'm sure for next year's forecast, it's probably going to be below 20% because we've had to dip in, we've had to use some of those reserves. We've used some of that debt capacity. We have 44 million. If we put 10 million back on, we borrow at 2%. How many of you can borrow at 2%? Not too many. So, probably nobody here. So, it makes more sense for us rather than panicking to continue to do our operations, continue to fix our roads, because guess what? If we just stop, the roads are just going to get worse. You're going to have to spend and do it eventually. So, we've been able to continue to do that and do it wisely because of the actions we took when things were good, as opposed to panicking when things are bad. So this is probably the most important thing if you leave here today, to understand that what we've done over the last 2-3 years made all the difference to making this happen. So very, very, very important. Flip to the next slide. What was it, Monday? Our village manager forwarded an email from Trustee Calandrella, who's not here today, but he sent an email and he suggested that because we are going to have to do some belt tightening, that we look to lower the trustees' salaries. I've already talked to several trustees. They're on board with doing this. So at the next board meeting, we're actually going to, because you have to do this 180 days prior to the next election. So at the next board meeting, which is 182 days prior, we are going to introduce the salary schedule to go back for trustees and for clerk. So the salaries in 2005, as you see here, so mayor was at $43,000, the trustees were at $10,350, the clerk was at $20,700. In 2020 currently, so as you know, the mayor's salary was raised prior to me taking office to 150 plus the 3,000 for the liquor commissioner, so 153,000. That was passed in 16. In 2010, the trustees and the clerk were raised. In 2019, we passed lowering the mayor's salary back down for the next term, so that's already in place. And as you can see, it's the 2005 number. So to me, it made sense to go back to the 2005 number for trustees. And the trustees seem to agree with that, at least a majority of them do. So, so go back down to a $10,350 salary for them. I'm also proposing the same salary for the clerk, and I know that's further than what the clerk was before, but we've taken most of the clerk's responsibilities now fall in the village manager's office. So the clerk used to be responsible for FOIA requests. The clerk used to be responsible for all the minutes, all of that. And the clerk's office was responsible for that. Well, now all of that support is now in the village manager's office, and the village manager handles that day to day. So the clerk's responsibilities are actually, they're certainly not more than the trustees. It might actually be a little bit less. They sign a few more documents than the trustees, but other than that, it's about the same. So that's our thought for the upcoming board meeting. So we're going to do that because it's important that we set the example, and the trustees agree. At least the ones I've talked to. I haven't talked to everyone, but I've talked to, I think, 4 of the 6. Again, this just popped up on Monday. So, those were the fiscal issues. So we talked about the debt we've taken off the books. We talked about how our capital expenditures, so we talked a lot about operating there. So the other problem is capital. So we diverted a lot of our capital expenditures on roads and parks to other things. And so we're behind, and you're going to see that. Flip to the next one. So this was back in 2017. This was a projection on roads based on our spending levels, okay? And keep in mind, we have about 38 million square feet of roads we have to take care of. That's, on a normal cycle, that's about 2 million square feet a year that we have to resurface. We were doing about 1 million. Obviously, you're falling further and further behind. So you see very poor, this is really bad, that we're almost 20%. And we're a little over 40% as far as poor and very poor roads. So the question was, what do we do about that? So flip to the next slide. So when the new trustees came in, one of the first actions we took, actually I think their first board meeting, is we elected as a board to increase investment, and then the whole board has agreed to increase investment this last year in our roads. And by increasing it, doubling it essentially, what that does by 2023 is we won't have any roads in a very poor condition anymore. And the stuff in poor condition will be gradually brought down further and further as well, okay? So flip to the next slide. So to put it in perspective, I believe our original plan called for Gulfview east, west, north, and south to be done in the last 2 years. That's number 4 and 5 up there. Instead, we've been able to get to all of these areas in your village. And I get calls, oh, you focus on the east side or you focus on the west side, you ignore my particular subdivision. We have ratings of every area, there's like 250, and we go down that area, we go down that list as far as replacement, and that's what we do. The one that's has been a challenge is Fernway, because they got so bad they had to be rebuilt. Rebuilding roads is incredibly expensive, so there's like a 9-year program that they're part of. I think they've got 3 years left to get all their roads completely rebuilt, because that was a Cook County unincorporated area that we had incorporated many years ago, so it didn't have a lot of our infrastructure, so there was a lot of work to be done there. But the point is, look at all these places we've touched. So, and the stuff in red was to be completed, might be completed by now. This is about a month ago, so it's probably completed by now. But you can see all the places in Orland Park that we've been to. And you can see, there's a lot on the east side. Kind of makes sense because the east side was built sooner than the west side, so they're kind of up for getting replacements. We do crack sealing because it extends the life of the roads. We do pothole repair because it extends the life of the roads. So, people, oh, we have potholes, we need to redo the road. Well, it's not exactly like that, because the rest of your road may not be in a horrible condition. And we rank it for everybody. We can't fix all the roads at once. That would be bad practice anyways. If we did, then 20 years from now, there would be this big crunch again. And you could never get enough people to do it. So you have to do it on a regular schedule. This plan for 5 years will allow us to get back on a regular schedule. And because we took all that debt off, that gave us some capacity. If we needed to use that, we could. because road prices go up more than 2% a year, and we borrow at 2% a year, so it makes sense to stay on our plan, which is what we've done. Flip to the next one. The other one is parks. Also an issue. So we built a lot of parks in the 1990s. I mean, you look at, in 1998 we built 11, but look at all these parks we built in the 1990s. Well, parks, you'll talk to the park guys, they'll say every 20 years they need to be redone. That's a lot of parks to redo in a decade. And flip to the next slide. This is how many we were redoing. So if you look at this, what we were renovating, on average, over that time period, we were doing about 1/2 of a park a year, or one every 2 years. We have 60 parks. It would take us 120 years to get through our parks at that pace. Obviously, this will not work. So we looked at doing it a different way. How can we do this in a different way that's more cost-effective, more efficient? So flip to the next slide. So what we did is we had a consultant come out. They evaluated all of these parks. There's 54 here, because some of them are open lands and they don't have equipment and all of that. So they evaluated all of these parks. And they looked at security, they looked at accessibility. And one of the things about accessibility is that the ADA, the rules have changed. So they may have met the rules 25 years ago, but they don't meet the rules now. So we look at all these and we said, what can we do over 5 years again to ensure that everything here in the orange, everything that's labeled as poor, can get addressed in the next 5 years? And then we'll do this process again. And so what we're doing is over 5 years, we're going to address everything, every piece of these things that are in orange, to make sure that all of these parks are brought up to speed, as opposed to doing a complete rehab of a park. If a park has things that don't need to be rehabbed, we'll rehab the parts that need to be. So that allows us to get into a lot more parks. We also have doubled our investment in our parks, notwithstanding our major parks, which is John Humphrey, Schussler, and Centennial. As you know, as you can look right out this back window, for those of you here in person, John Humphrey looks beautiful. I can't wait till it goes online next year. So we've spent about $2.5 million refurbishing that. It hadn't been touched since the late 80s when it was built. So it's very important for us to invest in it, because it had become almost useless. For its original intent, baseball, it had become useless because it had become too dangerous because of the drop-off. We used to laugh. There was a 7-foot drop-off between center field and home plate, and we'd say, where'd the kid go? Because he was down there so far. So very, very, very important that we've made these investments, okay? And so here's the result. Flip to the next slide. So this year, we were able to put up 7 shade pavilions in places that didn't have them. We did 7 parks, not 1. And some of them were so big, we did half this year, and we're gonna do half next year. And then we did 10 basketball courts, we resurfaced. John Humphrey we obviously did, and we did 8 tennis courts that we now made combination tennis and pickleball, because pickleball has become so popular. By changing the way we were doing business, we were able to get a lot more done. And yes, we also doubled our investment, but doubling our investment would have just meant 1 park got done every year if we did it the old way. By rethinking how we did it, made a huge difference. Flip to the next slide. So that's our infrastructure. The one other thing that I didn't have a slide up here on infrastructure that we are investing in is technology. Our technology in the village, to put it bluntly, is disastrous. It's way behind, it's antiquated, but it takes time to implement that. And we've been throwing a lot of money at it, and we are now going to implement a new system. It's going to take about 18 months to do that. But technology will really help us drive efficiencies. You'll notice it when it comes to websites. You may notice it with some customer service, but where we'll really notice it is internally, and it will allow us to be a lot more efficient with less cost over the long run, which is the goal. Because again, we want to keep those, want to be proactive about keeping those costs down so that we're in a position when something bad happens that we can handle it. So one of the reasons that we can do all of this is because of economic development, because we have a great commercial base. And some of the stuff that we've done for the village during this COVID time is because we were in a good financial position. So one of the things we did is we instituted and marketed Shop Orland and Shop Orland Auto. How many of you took advantage of Shop Orland and got a card back for shopping in Orland? Oh, you missed the boat. You could have, for spending in Orland, you could have gotten $30 back. it helped you with, helped the businesses because it brought people in to buy. It also helped you because you got a little bit of money back for something you might have were looking to purchase anyways. How about how many bought a car through the Shop Orland Auto program? How many? Looks like we got 1, 2. So I can tell you the auto dealers are thrilled with this program. It helped them get a lot of business from Indiana because of those incentives they got. So most of them set records during that month. So it was a great program. So part of that too is we developed a marketing video, which she's going to show you now.
I'm ahead of the game. Remember who am I? I'm a boss and I'm honestly off my rocker, but follow me, I'm ahead of the game. I'm ahead of the game. I'm only ever slinging, I'm working overtime. Got a song and I'm the singer, the melody, the vibe. I'm a prodigy, logically I'm impossibly wanted, and they'll remember my name. They'll remember my name. Ooh, well, I'm ahead now. I'm ahead of the game. I'm ahead of the game. Well, I'm ahead now. Well, I'm ahead now. I'm ahead of the game. I'm ahead of the game. Well, I got that thing, yeah, they call me the business. I'm ahead of the game. I'm ahead of the game. Ooh. Well, I'm ahead now. I'm ahead of the game. I'm ahead of the game. Well, I'm ahead now. I'm ahead of the game. I'm ahead of the game.
So I want to thank Nabia Zigar for putting all this together, and we'll be using this for some time, and we use it out on social media to draw people to Orland Park. And you see, we don't just have restaurants, we don't just have retail, we don't just have auto, we have amazing parks. It's just a fantastic community with so much to offer, great schools. So that's the idea behind this is to get that word out there, to bring people to Orland Park to shop, to live, and to play, and to dine as well. So, again, great job from Nabia. I really appreciate it. Something else the board did, and we unanimously agreed to do all of these things. And again, this is because we were in a position of fiscal strength. Find another town around here that did things like this. They didn't. I think Chicago tried to do some of this. They just borrowed more money because they're so far in debt. The good news is we were able to do this, and we're able to do it effectively. So we had a non-traditional retail sales tax sharing program that we implemented. What that is for people who want to go into our industrial areas, say maybe a brewery or equipment distributor that might have sales tax that's not your typical retail. It gives them an opportunity to get a share back of their retail and bring them and draw them into Orland Park as a business. So think a company like Martin Implement or something like that, who's already here, but somebody else like that to help us compete with that. Because obviously Cook County taxes are higher, as you saw from the property tax. So we need to help offset that to bring people in. Backfill vacant restaurants. We saw before COVID hit, we had 4 or 5 vacant restaurants. If things potentially get locked down again, as hard as it's been for restaurants, we could see more of that. So we want to see those get filled up. And we've already seen this be used once. Stan's Donuts is actually coming, and they're using that incentive program. So it's helping us bring things in to fill some of these vacant spaces. The new hotel incentive program, as we know, we have one, believe it or not, we only have one hotel in town. Giorgio's is in Orland Hills. They like to use an Orland Park address, who wouldn't? But they are actually in Orland Hills, so we have one hotel. And so we need more hotel space. We hear that from hotels all the time. So we have an incentive program for that. We also have had an incentive program for existing hotels, because we know that the travel industry and hotel industry got really shellacked through all this, through COVID. So we're sharing back over them over the course of a year to help them and offset some of their losses. Small business tax sharing program that we did over a 3-month period to help small businesses. So anyone who qualifies as a small business who does sales tax could apply for this program and get a 50-50 share back of that sales tax over those 90 days. So I believe it was July, August, and September, correct? July, August, and September, during those months, we would share back 50-50 the sales tax to, again, help our small businesses survive this time. The Orland Commercial Impact Program, this is something we just extended the other day for a year. And what that is that any new developments that are coming in, to give them a 25% off of their impact fees and 25% off of all of the fees associated with the village. And again, that's to spur investment. A lot of these places that we're looking to invest, say AMC, that I know of, AMC is still looking to add, even though they're in bankruptcy, they're still looking to add 5 or 6 theaters. We want to attract them for us to be the first ones they do. An incentive versus the rest of the country so that they come in here. So that's one of the driving factors in this. And obviously it's going to help all of our commercial and all of our builders to have this. It offsets their costs a little bit through these times. Advanced manufacturing incentive and the property tax incentive and the large business property, this is more towards bringing in bigger companies, advanced manufacturing. These are longer term incentives, but they're to help us diversify our economy away from just retail and restaurants. Flip to the next page. So one of the things that was pretty important to me, and probably to all of you, is developing the I-80 corridor, which we really haven't seen a lot of development since '09 there. And we do get calls on it regularly. It was what we pitched for Amazon. But I also recognize that Tinley Park and Mokina are in a similar boat. So in talking with those mayors, we decided to create the Chicago Southland Interstate Alliance to jointly market that region. And again, we're not trying to bring in logistics and warehouse and trucks. There's enough of that along the freeways. It's the last area in Will County that doesn't have that, actually. And so even in Will County CED. So we created this group. It's the 3 villages you see there. It's also the Will County CED and the Chicago Southland Chamber. Each of the villages has the mayor representing, has another person, usually a board member representing on that board, and then one business. So for us, it's American Technical Publishers, which is great because they actually create the video you're going to see in a sec. And for Mokina, it's Ozinga. And for Tinley Park, it's Panduit. Those are the kind of businesses that are in the I-80 corridor. Panduit, Ozinga, and American Technical Publishers. We want more of those kinds of businesses. And that's in Will County, so we're not facing the Cook County issues. So now I'm going to show you a video that we created for that.
The Chicago Southland Interstate Alliance invites you to discover all that the South Suburbs I-80 corridor has to offer. Located only 23 miles from the Chicago Loop, 16 miles from Chicago Midway Airport, and 32 miles from Chicago O'Hare Airport, the I-80 corridor, with quick access to Interstates 80, 355, 57, 294, and 55, 7 metro stations, and 2 rail lines, boasts of a residential population of over 4 million within a 25-mile radius, and easy access to a metropolitan market of over 9 million. Located in Chicago's southwest suburbs, the Chicago Southland Interstate Alliance I-80 corridor caters to every business demographic, making the communities an ideal business and residential location. The corridor zoning is flexible for a variety of uses such as corporate campuses, office, research, advanced manufacturing, retail, entertainment, and dining options. Surrounded by the lush greenery of the region's 20,000 acres of forest preserves, parks, open space, biking trails, and recreational facilities, the communities are home to exceptional schools, great neighborhoods, and business-friendly tax structures. The Alliance is comprised of the villages of Orland Park, Mokina, and Tinley Park, working together with businesses to promote the 5-mile corridor adjacent to the three communities, with Orland Park having approximately 200 acres ready to develop, Mokina more than 300 acres, and Tinley Park several hundred acres ready to be developed. The Chicago Southland Interstate Alliance communities are served by the Chicago area's top colleges and universities, providing an exceptional labor force and have become the location of choice for some of Chicago's world-renowned medical institutions, including the University of Chicago and Loyola University Medical Center. In addition to the exceptional care provided by Palos South Hospital, Silver Cross Hospital, and other regional medical facilities. Orland Park, with a population of more than 60,000, is the retail hub of the region, ranking 5th in retail sales in Chicagoland, and is home to a diversified economy that enhances opportunities for attracting skilled labor. The village's location in the center of a growth area also makes it an ideal place for business and industry. Mokina, with a population of more than 20,000, is known for its outstanding schools, plentiful recreation opportunities, diverse economy, and a reputation for consistently having some of the lowest property and sales tax rates in the area. Mokina offers an innovative economic incentive for business development and no local utility taxes on electricity and natural gas. Tinley Park, with a population of more than 57,000, is known throughout the region for its Hollywood Casino Amphitheater, the Tinley Park Convention Center, and a wide array of retail and dining options. Boasting a healthy and diverse business environment, Tinley Park has one of the strongest and most stable economic climates. Notable companies that call the Interstate 80 corridor home include Panduit, a world-class engineering and manufacturing firm that provides innovative networking and electrical solutions. Ozinga, the fourth-generation family business that provides concrete, bulk materials, and energy solutions. Provisor, a wholly owned subsidiary of CC Industries, was formed in 2009 to help global food processors gain a competitive advantage by using the latest technology, application innovation, and service to grow the global supply of safe, nutritious, and affordable food. The Horton Group, an insurance, employee benefits, and risk advisory firm with international facilities around the globe, and the ATP Group, Inc., an employee-owned publishing company that develops training materials for career and technical education, industrial training, and apprenticeship programs. The proven successful leadership of the Chicago Southland Interstate Alliance communities provide great opportunities for business growth and expansion. These communities are known throughout the Midwest for being fiscally responsible, having low crime rates, and being the perfect places to live, work, and raise families. Each community offers unique assets that cater to every corporate need, including office, healthcare, manufacturing, distribution, education, government, entertainment, commercial, retail, and hospitality industries. Our leaders are dedicated to business diversity and growth, and our communities have easy access to skilled labor, transportation, education, and the cultural advantages of the entire Chicago metropolitan area.
So this is just part of what we're working on regionally, but it's been very important to me to work with the region, work with the neighbors, because a rising tide lifts all boats. If another business like Panduit shows up and it ends up choosing Mokina over Orland Park still benefits. So it's really important that we work together. I've seen other regions where the neighbors fight over things and then it ends up not going anywhere because they're busy fighting over something as opposed to working together. So it's really important that we work together. That whole area is going to build out at some point, and if the first projects go into the other towns, that's okay, because eventually they'll come to Orland Park because there's only so much land in that corridor. So we will work together, and we've agreed not to compete via incentives with one another, and not to get into a bidding war where we end up with bad deals because we're bidding against our neighbors. That doesn't make any sense. So it's a really important endeavor, and I really want to thank the mayors of Mokina, Frank Fleischer, and the mayor of Tinley Park, Jake Vandenberg, for working with me on this. Really important. Go on to the next slide. So our I-80 corridor, you've seen this before. This is kind of a concept of what it could look like. It's just a concept. But it's when you put this up, I can tell you Mokina and Tinley get excited about it. They go, this is exactly what we want. You know, we want something like this, and that's what we want to see on this side of the corridor and that side of the corridor as well. Go to the next one. So over the last 3 years, we've seen a ton of new projects. You think about what happened, and I was a whopping, I think, 8 months into my tenure when Sears announced their closure, Carson's and Carson's Home Goods closed, Toys R Us and Babies R Us. Oh, by the way, Toys R Us was the #1 Toys R Us in North America. They all announced their closure, and they closed all their stores. We had 5 stores in February of 2018 announce their closure. Rather than panic, we had already had a plan with AMC going into Sears. Sears was going to take a smaller part of the space. The developer of AMC said, we'll take the whole space. Now that project was supposed to actually break ground in the Q2 of this year. Obviously, with what's happening with movie theaters, COVID put a big break on that. They've already done a lot of interior work, asbestos abatement. My understanding is the project's still moving forward, but we're just going to have to wait and see. I'll be honest, even if it ends up not happening, all indications are it'll still happen. But if it doesn't, it's better that we're starting with a blank slate than starting with a theater and trying to redevelop that. But AMC has said repeatedly they are still committed to the project, so it's just going to be a function of timing and when. We also filled, because we added the AMC, we were able to add Von Mauer. That deal was closed October of 18, and they opened in November of 19. So you saw how fast that got done. Obviously, completely changes the look of the mall in that portion. And how many of you have been in Von Mauer? Most of you. It's a beautiful store. It's a great addition to the mall. So we have that. But on top of that, Darwin Furniture expanded. Still their only retail location in Illinois. Ashley Furniture moved in, Hobby Lobby came in, Aldi expanded, Duluth Trading is here. That recently opened. The opening was delayed because of COVID. Texas de Brazil, Pita Pita Mediterranean Grill is doing great, Tradicia's doing great, Andy's Frozen Custard, Chewy's, Miller's Ale House, City Barbecue, McAllister's, Freddy's Frozen Custard, all those things have happened. On the auto side, the Porsche dealer expanded, Infiniti came in, Volkswagen expanded, Alfa Romeo and Maserati are here. Also, we had Tommy's Car Wash and Voda Car Wash just open up in the last couple of months. Other things, including residential, we had Sertoma, Bluff Point, Villas of Cobblestone, Villas of Tallgrass, Smith Crossings expanded. We were there for the grand opening there last week. And Orland Park Business Center added a 75,000 square foot building as well, which gives us some more capacity to fill people into, and that's in Will County. So all this is happening even with some of the struggles of Illinois, struggles of Cook County, and now the struggles of COVID. This is still happening. That speaks volumes to the strength of Orland Park and what a phenomenal community that we have. So all of these things are still happening. Flip to the next slide, and then think of this. Even with COVID, we have Stan's Donuts coming in. We have BMW expanding. REI is coming in. AMC is still committed to coming in. Hampton Inn coming in. Pete's Fresh Market coming in. And that's in the middle of COVID. They're still moving forward. That speaks volumes to Orland Park. So I want to thank our staff, our team, and all the trustees and all our residents for making this such a wonderful place, because that's why we're able to do this. Flip the next slide. So with that, I'm going to close with this video and then a quick summary. And basically, I think this summarizes what we've been trying to do. This was actually our first video that we did for marketing, and we did this back about 2 years ago. But I think it speaks to the quality of life here in Orland Park.
Hi, I'm Mike Ditka. From small startups to global corporations, join me as we go inside the dynamic business world and explore some of today's most successful companies. Welcome to Modern Business. This is a vibrant, diverse country in which we take pride. New ideas sprout up every day, and some have the potential to make your tomorrow vastly different from anything you've ever known before.
In the heart of the Chicagoland trading area, just southwest of the Windy City, lies a special place to call home. Originally a small farming community settled in 1834, it quickly became the thriving center of business, shopping, and dining it is today, although it never strays far from its true heritage. Welcome to the village of Orland Park, Illinois.
Orland Park is the region's destination for shopping, healthcare, entertainment, and dining. We have a thriving business community, an educated workforce, great schools, and great access to Chicago via 5 interstates within 15 minutes and 2 train lines. Our park system, forest reserves, youth programs, and low crime rate offer a great quality of life for families and for businesses to thrive.
For those who make their home here in the heart of one of the nation's largest commercial and cultural regions, the village lies within a 2-hour drive of 5 top 50 universities and has its own campus of Robert Morris University. Exceptional healthcare lies minutes away, with the University of Chicago and a major cancer center both in Orland Park, along with 3 nearby regional hospitals, including a Level 1 trauma center.
The University of Chicago chose Orland Park because of its leadership, its geographic location, and engaged population. The University of Chicago Medicine is committed to providing advanced care to the Southland of Chicago and access to clinical trials, some of which are only available at the University of Chicago. Many employees and physicians live in Orland Park and the surrounding community, and having the largest off-site facility of University of Chicago Medicine in Orland Park provides these employees the opportunity to live and work in a vibrant community.
Orland Park enjoys a diverse economy with industries ranging from corporate headquarters to locally owned businesses and regional healthcare facilities.
Orland Park is known for its retail economic base, but those of us that live and work here know that Orland really has a much more diverse economic base. We have great transportation assets. We're close to pretty much every major interstate highway. We have great entertainment infrastructure. We even have manufacturing, and it's really a great place to do business.
The village is planning a regional mixed-use campus to add to the already bustling I-80 corridor.
Orland Park has a plethora of retail opportunities, from an indoor regional mall to an open-air lifestyle center in Orland Park Crossing. There are several retail and dining destinations along our major thoroughfares. The wide range of choices has established Orland Park as a premier shopping destination in the region, drawing in shoppers from the surrounding communities as well as neighboring states.
Orland Park's retail sales are the 9th largest in the state of Illinois. The Old Orland Historic District is another outstanding destination for shoppers with its unique stores that comprise Antique Row. Orland Park boasts 64 public parks, more than 30 miles of trails, and more than 15,000 acres of forest preserves nearby.
We have great schools, a strong business base, and we're fiscally sound. We also have several great locations for development. Orland Park is a great place to raise a family and grow businesses well into the 21st century.
Orland Park, Illinois offers residential, corporate, retail, recreation, and dining that make it worthy of the title, the crown jewel of Chicago's Southland.
So that was done a couple of years ago, and it was actually featured on Fox Business. So we've been out trying to get the word out to people. I think everyone here who lives here knows what a great place Orland Park is, and we want to continue the growth, continue to see Orland Park thrive the way that it has for decades. And it's really because of the people that live here, the people that work here, the businesses that choose to be here. That's why it's such a phenomenal place. And you couple that with all the retail, the restaurants, and all the parks that we have, it's just a great place to live. I grew up here. I moved back here to raise my family here, so I think that much of it, obviously. Flip to the next slide. So really all I have to do now is talk about, kind of summarize some of the stuff we talked about. I'll do that pretty quickly. On public health, I guess the important thing here to remember is it is a virus. It's hospitalizations that really matter. So pay attention to that. And if the hospitals aren't being overrun, we need to really resist the locking everybody back up and destroying our economy over it. Public safety, crime is at its lowest rate in over 25 years, and yes, there's a lot of pressure. But our police department does a phenomenal job, and Orland Square still remains the safest mall in the region. Our fiscal issues, we talked about that. I can't emphasize enough, if it wasn't for the actions we took to lower debt, to lower our operating expenditures, we would not be in the position we are today to handle COVID the way that we have. Infrastructure investment. In 2017, over 40% of our roads and 18 of our parks were in poor condition. We've doubled our investment in that so that will be taken care of over the next 5 years and put us in a much better footing going forward. On economic development, we talked about all the great projects we have and the projects we still have coming. You know, Stan's, Pete's, BMW, Hampton Inn, AMC, all those things that are still coming even with COVID. So it's just, it speaks volumes. The marketplace tells you more than anyone else. We live here, so we love the place. When the market's coming in here, they tell you what a great place you have and what a great place that it is to live and be. Next. So with that, I know this was fairly long, but there's a lot of subjects to cover. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, including questions on public info. What is the address? Public info office at orlandpark.org. If you send your questions there, an email question there, Nabia will give them to me. So any questions? I can't have covered everything. Where are we having?
Good morning, Mayor. Thank you for having this still amid COVID. I know you said that it was supposed to be back in May, and we appreciate you still putting this on. I do have a couple questions for you, so if I could ask all three, and then you could take your time and answer.
Okay.
The first one is, are you aware that there is a contractor permitted to perform work at the Orland Ridge development that has been found in violation of Illinois prevailing wage laws? Do you condone this behavior? And is this the type of contractors that we would like to see working on new developments in Orland Park?
Okay. So it was all related to a contractor working at Orland Ridge. As I recall, Orland Ridge is a private development, correct? So Orland Ridge is not, it's a private development, so they're entitled to use whatever contractor they choose to use. There's no prevailing wage requirements for that particular project because it's not a public project. So I don't think the question really applies to a contractor working at Orland Ridge. Next question.
Mayor, this is, again, thank you everybody, you and the chief for this great presentation, very informative. This is off in left field, really not related, but because we're all ready to cast votes. I recently received a letter from the Secretary of State, Jesse White's office, that was quite confusing and a little intimidating about the ballots that were sent out or any of the information that was sent out. And in case anybody else is feeling somewhat the same way with some fears of going into in-person vote, could you clarify that information?
I will try to clarify what I know about the voting. It is very confusing. There were a lot of things sent out. There were things sent out apparently that said you needed to bring this or your vote wouldn't count. So that should not be the case. So the way things work in Illinois, at least prior to COVID, is that if you wanted an absentee or mail-in ballot, you requested it, and then you got one. If you decide to vote in person and you requested a mail-in or absentee ballot, and you decide to vote in person, you need to bring the one you received in with you and turn that in, and then vote. Okay, and then your vote will count that day. If you do not bring that in, you let them know, and then they make it a provisional ballot in which they make sure they didn't receive, that you didn't vote twice, basically, is what they do. So the provisional ballot gets counted after the close of the election. My understanding is that's still the same way that it's going to operate, that you still had to have requested the mail-in ballot in order to be told that at the polls. And I know the letter doesn't necessarily read that way, but no one, to my knowledge so far, has gone to the polls and been told you're going to, because you'll be told it's a provisional ballot. No one's been told that has not brought the document, because a lot of people said they never applied for a mail-in ballot and they received a thing saying they need to bring this in or their vote won't count. To my knowledge, no one's been told that at the on election day at the polling location. If that does happen, you should bring it up. You should make a complaint to the Cook County Election Board and to the Illinois Election Commission. The village can't really do anything for you on that. We don't have any control over the elections. So that would be my best suggestion. But as long as you're able to go in there and vote and they don't tell you it's a provisional ballot, then there's no issues.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I really like what you're doing as far as the I-80 corridor. The pictures are very, very nice. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful thing. However, what I would like you guys to consider is possibly putting in a TA or a pilot truck stop in that area. 2 reasons. Number one, it's 24-hour a day, 7-day a week tax revenue. Be able to come in the sales tax revenue. Secondly, it would open up additional opportunities for restaurants. And thirdly, as you said, you have your one hotel you're doing, you could possibly put another hotel or 2 into it. I know it might not fit with what you're trying to do within the Orland Park area, but sales tax revenue is a nice thing to be able to get 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
So the question is about putting in a truck stop at I-80 because of the tax revenue. I'm just going to summarize it. So I can tell you that I think there's probably unanimous on our board, unanimous on Mokina's board, and Tinley might be different, but we're not in favor of doing that. Yes, it would provide tax revenue, very short-sighted, because all the things that we're trying to do to bring good jobs, high-paying jobs, as soon as you do that, done. None of those places are coming. I don't know how many truck stops you see next to buildings like Horton, Panduit, Ozinga throughout the country, but you don't. So as soon as you make that short-term decision for short-term grab of money, and oh, by the way, they all want big gambling operations there too. So there's no support of that from me, and to my knowledge, and none of our trustees, as well as Mokina that I'm aware of. So we just, or Will County CED for that matter. The last thing we want to see is more truck terminals and more trucks. That's not what we want to see on that corridor. There's plenty of trucks. There's plenty of places for them to go. To be honest, much better for something like that to be in Matson or someplace where they don't have other development opportunities. That can be great for those communities. You can say, well, we'll lose out on it. Yeah, maybe, but we gain because those communities thrive. If those communities thrive, it's better for us. So there's places where that fits. I don't believe that anyone here believes that it fits in Orland Park. Other questions? Anything online?
Yes, we have a question from Craig Manning. Based on the messages from Mayor Fiscal throughout the 2020 year, there seems to be a consistent message. The mayor prioritizes economic growth and stability over public health during the pandemic. Why is the economy science prioritized in public health?
So the question is, or the comment is, that the mayor prioritizes the economy over public health, and why do I prioritize the economy over public health and safety? Obviously, everyone wants to keep people safe. The idea that it is a choice between one or the other is just wrong. It is simply not a binary choice between the economy and public health. If we shut down our economy and no one is working, how long do you think we're going to have a public health system? How long are you going to be able to pay for your food? How long are you going to be able to get your food? We have to have a vibrant economy to provide good health care. The reason we have a great healthcare system is because we have a strong economy. So it's not an either or choice. It's a how do you do it safely. Orland Park has demonstrated that we can do it safely, and we have. And because we've done that, we're in a much better position than places that decided just we're going to close everything. Because how's that working for them? There's no money tree. So it's very important that you do both.
Same gentleman has another question.
Do we have any, I mean, can we mix it up, or is it going to be the same person asking a bunch of questions?
We do have one other.
Okay.
Katie McHugh, thank you for taking the time to answer the question. Mine is regarding the lawsuit suing Governor Fiscal. I am surprised it wasn't covered already. What was the purpose of the lawsuit and why was it dropped? We regret that we
So the question, and so I sense a theme to these questions. The questions are, we all know we're entering the silly season of political stuff, and there's a campaign coming up in April, so I sense that this is going to be what it is. That's okay. Happy to answer the questions. So the question is, well, the comment was all about the lawsuit and wasteful spending, et cetera. And then the question is, do I regret wasteful spending? There was no wasteful spending when it comes to the lawsuit. I don't regret the decision to file a lawsuit. If you recall, could you go back to the case slides at the beginning where it shows Illinois? So way up at the beginning of the presentation, that one. So if you recall, when we filed the lawsuit, we were here. Restaurants weren't open, gyms weren't open, most of our economy was not open. We were shut down. Look where our cases were, which was the big metric. And hospitalizations, we go to that page, but that was flat. There was no reason for things to be closed. But we had people who couldn't get rehab, couldn't go to the gym and do their cardiovascular work. We had tons of employees that couldn't work because these things were closed. That's when we filed that lawsuit. Now, the ruling was supposed to be given. It was a temporary restraining order, by the way. We didn't lose the lawsuit. It was a temporary restraining order, was the initial ruling. Was supposed to be given here on July 2nd. July 2nd, there was a ruling downstate that declared all of the governor's executive orders since this date void. By the way, that was upheld yesterday in the federal court. So that happened, and the judge didn't rule. So at this point, and of course, we also opened into phase 4, so restaurants open and gyms open. So by the time that she was supposed to rule, the circumstances had changed. One of the reasons circumstances changed is our lawsuit and several others throughout the state put pressure on the governor to actually move into phase 4 because he was talking about not doing it prior to that. So at the end of the day, it was that pressure that we and others put on him that got him to open up. By the time the judge ruled, it was August 4th. Clearly a long time from when we filed it. So the judge ruled. We elected as a board for the original lawsuit 5-2 to extend the lawsuit to keep it going in August on a vote of 6-1, because as we know from a meeting that we had, that the state of Illinois and Cook County were coordinating how to come after Orland Park businesses, but they were waiting until our lawsuit was over. So our lawsuit was actually providing protection for our businesses. So we allowed that lawsuit to continue until the latest date possible at very little additional cost. So when you think of $66,000 and you think of the fact that we opened here and we didn't stop the lawsuit till here, boy, that's an awful lot of revenue, like millions in revenue to Orland Park. So I don't regret it at all because it helped us. It was worth every penny because we were open sooner, people had jobs sooner, small businesses didn't go out of business. All of those things, it was worth every penny.
Pragmatic other questions. While watching the state of Orland Park today, it was good to learn about the Shop with Me program. I am currently in the market for a new auto and realized the program has already ended. Is there any talk of running the program again?
The trustees, we talk about these things all the time. If we do, we will announce it and we'll do it. I'm not sure if we will do it again or not. Other questions? Nobody? Well, there's nothing online? Well, I want to thank everyone for coming. Orland Park's a phenomenal place to live, as we all know. That's why we've chosen to live here. It's still a great place to live. We have phenomenal parks. We have a great police department. You've seen all of what we talked about how low crime is. We still see all of this investment in town. It's great. So I want to thank everyone for coming today, and please be safe and have a good afternoon.